My name's Babu Karkor. I actually come from West Africa, the Gambia. I work for our national water and electricity company called NAWEC. I actually came across Humanitarian Global in the internet, and I was really interested when I found they could do some training on water sanitation and hygiene. Actually, I was pleasantly surprised because when I came here, the training material, the lecture guide and everything was extremely beyond my expectation. Although it was very intensive and very, very tough. So every day I have to do a homework, which was really not easy. Closing at 5 o'clock and having to follow up with a homework wasn't very easy, but I think we have conquered it, and I am grateful. My expectations were met beyond imagination. The training was really detailed. The material and content were really wonderful, and I think everything was beyond my expectation. I've been given material, I've been given guidelines, and even this institution is trying to link me with people internationally who are interested in and doing what I am interested in doing also. My connection actually started when I flew into Kenya around 1 o'clock late at night. I found people of Humanitarian Global at the airport. These people were able to meet me at the airport, pick me up, and made me settle down late that night. And from there, I think it was just like a family. You know, everything went well. I really felt like home from home. Nairobi, frankly speaking, I can see Kenyan people are a very agitated people. They want to drive for development too much. But my advice to Kenyan people is Kenya is a beautiful country. You've got good education system. Your country is developing, and I can see a lot of young, talented people in Kenya. I think you have to at least minimize your aggressiveness. You are getting there. Guys, is frankly speaking, at Humanitarian Global, if you come to train with them, you really expect to have value for your money. The course facilitators are wonderfully landed. They will give you both the guidance, the information you might need with relevance, and they can even help connect you to other professionals there in the world. Thank you. I am pleasantly surprised that I could discover such wonderful knowledge in Kenya. I can't be but very grateful. And I don't think you guys owe me anything. Maybe I owe to come back again. Thank you.
Okay, welcome. A global team that has brought this session today. With me, I have two people. The first one being Anthony, who is the academic registrar at Humanitarian Global. So I'd like to welcome Anthony to say something. So Anthony, are you there with us?
I can hear you, Eric. I hope you can get me loud and clear.
Yes, I can get you loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to all of our participants who have managed to join. And I can see we have more participants joining. But as we get started for the session of the day, where we have Irene, who is going to be leading us in that session, I'd like just to brief you on who we are as Humanitarian Global Institute, the organization that is being able to organize for these kind of sessions for you. So Humanitarian Global, this is an institute that is based in Nairobi, Kenya. Our main focus has been to work with both humanitarian and also development professionals when it comes to capacity building. So that is what we focus on. And we focus on a couple of areas and also services that we offer to you. And as you can see on the screen, I would like even just to highlight on some of the areas that we tackle, or maybe what we do. And one of the key areas of focus has always been training and learning. So that is what we are better known for, ensuring that we can offer quality training and learning to our participants. And this is a wide area, which includes offering online courses. So that means online courses and training programs that is one of the products that we focus on. We also organize for webinars like what we are having today. We also organize for training workshops, so meaning that we can work with the organization, we can work with your team, so that we can bespoke a training for them. We also host our conferences. We organize for capacity building and team building activities. In addition to that, we also provide consultancy services. And this is where we ensure that you can use the pool of experts who work with us as the trainers and also consultants to ensure that we can provide you with a platform where you can seek professional advice and also get mentorship, get assisted on in some of the projects that you might be doing. Thirdly, we also ensure that we can promote humanitarian and development work. And this is where we ensure that in case you are out there doing a project that is touching on humanitarian aspects, you can share with us that kind of a story, and then you can publicize it on our social media pages and also our website. Fourthly, we ensure that we can keep you informed, and that is through the humanitarian global resources that we offer. And these include blogs, discussion forums, where we are able to further conversation when it comes to some of the areas that we want to build our capacity in. We also ensure that through the website, you can also access some publications, handbooks that you can use when it comes to your training. So that is just a brief of the kind of services, the kind of work that we do. And some of the very many areas that we manage to offer this kind of training and learning. We do train on monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning. We also do train on water sanitation and hygiene, that is WASH. We also do train on disaster risk reduction and management, food security and nutrition in emergencies, and procurement and supply chain management, human nutrition and dietetics, maternal, infant, and young child nutrition, which is our key area of focus today. We also do train on public health, project planning and management, gender-based violence, data analysis, and that means you can undertake a course with us when it comes to data analysis, where we use various approaches, such as use of SPSS and other technologies as well. We also do train on child protection, climate change, and without forgetting humanitarian principles and essentials. So that is just a list of some of the major areas that we focus on when it comes to training and learning. So as we get ready to start the session, and I know you are eager to see what we have when it comes to the thematic area that we're going to be focusing on today, we urge you, in case you're interested for further training in these kind of areas, you can always reach out to us. So we have the contact details, and that is including the website, the Humanitarian Global website, that is www.humanitarianglobal.com. You can write us an email at info@humanitarianglobal.com. You can see our phone numbers here, and that means you can always find us on WhatsApp. You can call us, and we're going to be there to assist you. So thank you so much, and maybe just a quick message to pass across. This being a free webinar, we do not offer certificate of participation. However, you can always follow us for further training on the same, so that you can get certified in this area. So what I would urge you, just follow up with the session, and in case of any inquiries for further training, our team is ready there on the chat section, and you're going to be assisted on how you can get started with your course. So thank you once again, and I wish you the very best as you follow up this session with us. Back to you, Eric.
Thank you for that, Anthony. And our next key person is our speaker of the day, who is Madam Irene Maregi. And before she starts, just a few house rules. If you have any question concerning the session for today, or anything concerning Humanitarian Global, you can write it on the Q&A section of the chat, and we will be here to assist you in anything. Madam Irene, are you there with us?
Yes, I hope you can hear me. Good morning.
Morning, yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I'm here. We are ready to start.
Yeah, the floor is yours now.
Yes, thank you. Welcome everybody to this webinar session on maternal, infant, and young child nutrition. So that is the general topic that we'll be talking about, but our focus today will be on the importance of adequate nutrition in the first 2,000 days of life. Now, when we talk about the first 2,000 days of life, to make it simple, we are talking about life from conception to their 5th birthday. So when we talk about the first 2,000 days of life, it's from when the child is conceived, not necessarily when the child is born, but when we talk about starting life, we are talking about the conception. So we are talking about from conception to the 5th birthday of the child. So our agenda today will start with the introduction. We will define nutrition. We will look at the nutrition requirements during pregnancy and pre-pregnancy. Pre-pregnancy refers to the period before pregnancy. And then we look at nutrition in the postnatal period. That is nutrition after the mother has delivered the baby. We will focus on breastfeeding because, as we know, we recommend that the child is breastfed from birth exclusively for the first 6 months of life, and then breastfeeding can continue up to 2 years and even later. And then we look at timely and nutritionally adequate complementary feeding. So we look at now how you go about introducing other foods to the child after breastfeeding. And then our third agenda today is the impact of malnutrition in development of children. So we look at what malnutrition does to the mother, to the baby during pregnancy, and also to their development and their immunity in the first 5 years of life. And then we will have a question and answer session where we will open the floor for your comments, your questions, and we can have a lively and healthy discussion about what we will have covered. So I will get right into it. So the definition of nutrition. So nutrition is defined as the science of all the interactions between living organisms and the food they eat. So living organisms interact with food through the physiological process that involves ingestion. Ingestion is the eating of the food, taking the food into the mouth, and then digestion, where food is broken down, absorption, where the broken down food is absorbed, and then transportation. After the food is broken down, it is transported all over the body depending on the requirements and utilization of this food. So when we talk about nutrition, we are talking about all of these processes: the process of eating, digesting, absorbing this food, transportation, and utilization of food. And then it also includes the biological actions on food that take place in the body and how they affect health and disease. So there are physiological or biological processes that take place in the body. And you find that if these biological processes are affected by the type of food we eat or the quantity of food we eat, then that will affect your health and your disease. So for example, if you do not take food that is rich in proteins, that provides enough proteins, then you will end up with protein energy malnutrition, and now that will affect your health. If you do not take food that will provide enough nutrients also, you find that your immunity is affected, and that predisposes you to disease. So nutrition plays really a key role in the health of people, whether it's in terms of predisposing you to disease, helping you fight disease, or even helping you recover if you have been exposed to disease. It also right? So when you look at nutrition, we are all aware that when we choose the food we eat, we choose the food for some reason. It may be due to economic status, where you will prefer to go for one food over another because it is cheaper and you can afford that. Our social and cultural norms also influence the choices of food that we eat. Also the psychological aspects of it, because when somebody is not in a good mental health state, their diet and their nutrition is also compromised. So when you look at nutrition, I want you to picture it as a wide field where we not only just look at the food we eat, but why we choose the food we eat and how the food we eat also affects our health. So we'll get right into the nutrition requirements in pre-pregnancy and pregnancy. So the reason why we are looking at nutrition requirements pre-pregnancy, that is before pregnancy, is because we say that the 2000 days start at conception. So before even conception happens, we need to look at the nutrition status of this mother. Because if we start looking at the nutrition status as pregnancy starts, then there are some things that might not go well, because when conception happens, the body needs nutrients for the forming baby at that moment. So if the mother did not have good nutrition status before she got pregnant, then the pregnancy will be affected right from the start. So the diet before pregnancy will affect your baby's development in the womb and their health in the future. Factors such as your weight compared with your height, that is your BMI, and what you eat can play an important role in your health during pregnancy and the health of your developing baby. So even before you think about conception and the baby already being there, your BMI, that is your weight and your height before pregnancy, and what you eat before conception will affect the health of the baby. So for example, the pre-pregnancy weight directly influences the baby's birth weight. So studies show that underweight women are more likely to give birth to small babies, even though they may gain the same amount in pregnancy as normal weight women. On the other hand, overweight women have increased risks for problems in pregnancy, such as gestational diabetes or high blood pressure. So as you can see, the weight of the mother before conception will affect the baby's birth weight. So even if the mother gains the same amount of weight as a healthy mother, a mother who was underweight, that is, their weight was below the weight that is recommended, is more likely to give birth to a small baby. And by a small baby, we mean a baby who is less than the recommended weight of 2.5 kg. So even if the mother gains the same amount of weight as another mother, their baby is likely to be underweight at birth. And then overweight women, even if they do not gain so much weight during pregnancy, have increased risk of getting things like gestational diabetes, high blood pressure, preeclampsia, and also getting what we call, in quotes, big babies, where you find the baby is above 4.5 kgs and they are born with challenges of controlling their blood sugar. So it's very important if they are held their weight within the recommended range, so that their BMI is well, they are not underweight, they are not overweight, so that they can give their baby a chance to have a normal weight. Many women don't eat a well-balanced diet before pregnancy and may not have the proper nutritional status for the demands of pregnancy. Generally, a pregnant woman needs to add about 300 extra calories daily after the first trimester to meet the needs of her body and her developing baby. These calories, as well as her entire diet, need to be healthy, balanced, and nutritious. So during pregnancy, you find that the body goes through a tough time where the body demands more nutrients from the mother, because the body has to cater for the growing baby. So if the mother did not have a good nutrition status before pregnancy, her body may not be able to keep up with the demands that the body is making. So for example, if the mother had very low iron stores, or the mother was anemic, and then she gets pregnant, then the body demands even more iron from the mother. And if the diet does not compensate for that, then the mother is going to have a very compromised nutrition status, because the body will always cater to the baby first and then to the mother. So you will find that the mother's stores or whatever the body has will all go to the baby. So the mother is left in a worse nutrition status than the baby. So we look at some of the specific nutrients that are of very key concern during pre-pregnancy and during the early months of pregnancy. And the first nutrient is folic acid. So all women of childbearing age need 400 micrograms of folic acid each day. Pregnant women need 600 micrograms of folic acid daily. So as you can see already, before you get pregnant, your body needs 400 micrograms. And then at the moment that a woman gets pregnant, then they need 600. So that's an additional 200 micrograms of folic that should be added to the diet. Folic is a nutrient found in some green leafy vegetables, nuts, beans, citrus fruits, fortified breakfast cereals, and some vitamin supplements. So folic acid is generally found in a lot of foods, as you can see, that are available. But for you to get enough folic acid daily through the diet, then you should make sure that in every meal, at least you take some green vegetables, that your meals are also balanced so that you get enough vitamins, you get to eat enough fruits, and that way you can get folic acid. It can help reduce the risk of birth defects of the brain and the spinal cord, which are called neurotube defects. The most common neurotube defect is Spina Bifida, in which the vertebrae don't fuse together properly, causing the spinal cord to be exposed. This can lead to varying degrees of paralysis, incontinence, and sometimes intellectual disability. So folic acid is really important in the first days or the first few weeks after conception. And this is because this is when the cells are rapidly dividing and they are specializing. So the cells at that time really need all the nutrients that should be provided, so that we can avoid some of these birth defects. And some of these birth defects, like what we are calling the Spina Bifida, that is the vertebrae, that is the bones in the spine, do not fuse together properly. So the spinal cord is exposed. Some of these defects really happen very early on in pregnancy. So you find that if the woman falls pregnant, does not even realize it, does not have enough folic acid or iron or such nutrients, by the time they realize they are pregnant 2 or a month later, then you find that this defect has already taken place. And as you can see, some of these defects really have lifelong consequences, because like the Spina Bifida is something that is going to affect the baby for life, because the baby might have some degree of paralysis, that is, they're not able to walk. Sometimes they have incontinence, they're not able to control the passing of urine or stool, and sometimes even the intellectual capabilities affected. So it's really important that even before they get pregnant, women consider their nutrition status. Folic acid is most beneficial during the first 28 days after conception, when most neurotube defects occur. Unfortunately, many women don't realize they are pregnant before 28 days. This is why it's important to start folic acid before conception and continue through pregnancy. Your healthcare provider will recommend the right amount of folic acid to meet your needs. Most healthcare providers will prescribe a prenatal supplement before conception or shortly afterward to ensure all of your nutritional needs are met. However, a prenatal supplement doesn't replace a healthy diet. So what we are saying, as I was explaining before, folic acid is most beneficial in the first 28 days after conception, which is when the cells are rapidly dividing and differentiating. And that is also when, as you can see, most of these neurotube defects and the brain defects occur. So because within the first 28 days, very few women will already have known that they're pregnant and start taking enough folic acid. So it's important that if a woman is planning to get pregnant, that they visit a healthcare provider, because if you need supplements, then of course they should be prescribed, because it's also not very advisable to just go to the chemist or pharmacy and just say, well, I want folic acid or I need this or that. It needs to be prescribed so that you can get the right dosage. So before a woman considers conceiving, then they should visit a healthcare provider so that they can undergo tests to find out which nutrients they may have a deficiency in, and they can get the correct supplement. The other nutrient of concern is iron. So many women have low iron stores as a result of monthly menstruation and diets low in iron. Women over the age of 18 need 18 milligrams of iron daily. Iron needs increase during pregnancy, and building iron stores helps prepare a mother's body for the needs of the developing baby during pregnancy. Good sources of iron include meats such as beef, pork, lamb, liver, and other organ meats, poultry, fish and shellfish, leafy greens, legumes, whole grain breads, and iron-enriched white bread, pasta, rice, and cereals. So iron is also a very big concern, especially because you find most women are already iron deficient even before they get pregnant. So because of the monthly menstruation and the physiological processes that take place, then women who are of a reproductive age, women who already undergo menstruation every month, they need to take care that they do not become anemic or iron deficient. And so during pregnancy, the body demands even more iron from the mother, because remember that as the baby is developing, even the baby is generating its own circulatory system, its own blood, its own organs, all of that need iron. So you can imagine a mother who already has deficiency in iron, and now they have gotten pregnant, they may not even be aware of it, and the body is demanding even more iron from the mother. Now, the good news is iron is found in a lot of foods that most of us have access to on a daily basis. So if you have access to organ meats or meats, green vegetables, legumes, whole grain breads, whole grain pasta or rice and cereals, then you will have a good source of iron. The challenge with getting sufficient amount of iron from food comes in during preparation. So the way we prepare our foods is what most of the time gets us less iron. So for example, when you're preparing the leafy greens and you want maximum amount of iron from this food, then you should accompany this food with a vitamin C rich fruit, so that the vitamin C helps the body absorb more iron. When you're preparing greens also, you do not overcook them, because if you overcook them, then you will lose the iron. So most of the iron that we get from our foods is lost because of how we prepare food or how we store it or how we even consume it. So that's also a point to note, that although iron is readily available, we miss a lot of it because of how we prepare food and how we also consume it. The other nutrient of concern is calcium. So preparing for pregnancy includes building healthy bones. If there's not enough calcium in the pregnancy diet, the developing baby may draw calcium from the mother's bones. This can put women at risk for osteoporosis later in life. The recommended calcium intake for women over the age of 18 is 1,000 milligrams daily. For women 18 years of age and younger, the recommended daily calcium intake is 1,300 milligrams. So 3 servings of milk or other dairy products every day will give you enough calcium that you need if you're over the age of 18. So calcium is used to build bones. And when a baby is developing, obviously their skeleton is also developing, and the baby needs calcium. if the diet of the mother does not provide enough calcium, then what the body does is that it takes calcium from the mother's bones. So the physiological process of pregnancy prefers to enhance the life of the baby over the life of the mother. So if the mother does not provide enough calcium through the diet or does not have enough calcium in her stores, then the body will take the calcium from her bones. And so you find that over time, over many pregnancies, the woman ends up having weak bones. So you end up with women who have osteoporosis. Osteoporosis is where the bones, because of lack of enough calcium, the bones become very weak and very easy to break. So you find that the women get that risk that if calcium is not enough, they're the ones who end up bearing the burden of that. And then we look at energy needs. So a daily increase of 300 kilocalories during the second and third trimester above the allowance for non-pregnant women is recommended. Pregnant teenagers, pregnant women, physically active women may require more. Enough energy is needed to spare the protein for growth. The recommended energy intake during pregnancy is 40 kilocalories per kilogram of body weight. Minimum energy intake is 36 kilocalories per kilogram of body weight. So what you're saying is the body needs more energy during pregnancy, and you should increase at least 300 kilocalories on top of the regular diet for pregnant mothers in the second and the third trimester. But if the mother is a teenager, they will need even more energy than the 300 because their body is still developing. Women who are very physically active will also need more than the 300 kilocalories because of the nature of their lifestyle. Now, women need more energy during pregnancy so that protein is not used. So during physiological processes, the three main foods that provide energy for the body are carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Now, if you do not take in enough carbohydrates, then your body will use proteins, will break down proteins so that it can get energy. And if you do not have enough carbohydrates or proteins, then your body will break down the fats. So what we're saying is, if the mother does not provide enough energy or carbohydrates in her diet, then the body will start breaking down her own protein to get energy. And we do not want that because protein is really needed in pregnancy to build the tissue for the new baby and to ensure that the new baby develops well. So in order to spare the protein and ensure that the mother does not lose protein, then we need to give enough energy. So we look at the recommended weight gain during pregnancy. Now, weight gain in pregnancy is a good indicator of the progress or the development of the baby. Now, it's not the only indicator. I want you to note that. It's not the only indicator, and it's not the primary indicator that we use. There are other indicators that are taken into consideration, but it's one of the easiest ways because it's very easy to monitor the weight of a person. It's one of the easiest ways to monitor the progress of a mother, and it also helps you recommend any changes to the diet for the mother. So if the mother before pregnancy had a normal nutrition status, then the recommended weight gain is 11.5 to 16 kgs throughout the pregnancy. Then if the mother was underweight, the recommended weight gain is 12.5 to 18 kgs. If the mother was overweight, 7 to 11.5 kgs. If the mother was obese, 5 to 9 kgs will do. Now, I also would like to mention that this weight gain during pregnancy, we consider the trend, how they are gaining weight on a month-to-month basis, and not necessarily the beginning and the end. So we also consider the trend, how are they gaining weight? So you monitor their weight at every antenatal clinic visit, and you see from last month to this month how much they have gained, have they lost weight? Because sometimes you find that although when you compare from the beginning to the end of the pregnancy, the mother may have gained weight, but she may have been gaining the weight very quickly. So you may find that the mother has been gaining 5 kgs every month, and that may be a cause for concern. Or you may find that even though the mother ultimately will have gained weight, that there are instances where she was losing a lot of weight. So you find that this month the mother has lost 3 kgs, 5 kgs, and that will be a reason for concern. So we monitor weight during pregnancy progressively on a month-to-month basis, but this is the recommended weight gain. Now, that does not mean that if a mother gains more or less, that it's really a cause for concern, but it's a cause for you to pause and dig further, find out what is happening. Is the mother undergoing challenges, like is the mother not able to feed at all, which is a big thing that happens? Is the mother not able to retain any food? Is the mother vomiting throughout? So weight can also help us question what is going on during pregnancy. Then you look at protein. So the recommendation for protein allows an additional 10 grams per day throughout the pregnancy. Recommended protein intake is 60 grams per day. Adequate protein consumption during pregnancy is important, but excessive protein may have adverse effects. So although the mother needs to take in enough protein so that the baby's tissue can develop properly, excess protein may have adverse effects. So you may get allergic reactions, or you may get that the baby becomes very big. So excessive protein is not really recommended, but it's not very easy to get excess protein in a normal diet. The only way to have really excess protein is if the mother is not taking a balanced diet. So as long as you ensure that the mother takes in enough vegetables, enough carbohydrates, enough protein, and the diet is balanced in that sense, then it's really not very plausible that the mother will be taking in excess protein. But if the mother is only taking in meats and eggs without any carbohydrates, without any fats, then that is a cause for concern. And then you look at the vitamins. So there is an increased need for nutrients required for blood production and rapid cell multiplication during pregnancy. So as the baby is developing, the baby is also generating its own circulatory system, as I said earlier. So the baby needs to make its own blood. And some of the things that are really needed when blood is being made are the vitamins. So these vitamins should be provided for in the diet. The pregnant woman needs extra folate, as we talked about, and vitamin B12 due to the great increase in blood volume and the rapid growth of the fetus. So vitamin B12 is very essential, especially during cell multiplication, when cells are subdividing very quickly, which is what happens during pregnancy, and also for the production of blood. So vitamin B12 is very key in production of blood, and when it's not present, there can come about a certain type of anemia. The recommendation for water-soluble vitamins is slightly higher during pregnancy, whereas for fat-soluble vitamins, change slightly or not at all. So the fat-soluble vitamins are the vitamins A, D, E, and K. So these are the vitamins that we are saying might not really, then their need might not increase significantly, but the water-soluble vitamins, the B vitamins, the C vitamins, they are in higher demand during pregnancy. We look at minerals. So minerals involved in building the skeleton, that is calcium, phosphorus, and magnesium, are in great demand during pregnancy. The body conserves iron even more than usual during pregnancy. Absorption increases threefold. due to a rise in blood concentration of the blood's iron absorbing and iron carrying protein transferring. So during pregnancy, the body absorbs iron 3 times more than when pregnancy is not there. And so that means that we need to increase iron in the diet, or even through supplements if the diet is not enough, so that the mother and the baby can have enough iron. And one of the reasons that iron is needed so much in folic acid is because, other than the fact that the baby is forming its own blood and its own tissue and organs, is that also the mother needs to build enough stores so that during breastfeeding, the baby can get enough iron. So the baby gets iron and calcium from breast milk for the first 6 months of life. So the body also needs to store enough iron so that during breastfeeding, the baby can get the iron that they require. Zinc is required for DNA and RNA synthesis, and thus for protein synthesis. Zinc can be obtained from meats and legumes. So zinc is also another important mineral because it's really key during the development of the genetic material, the DNA and the RNA in the cells, and therefore the production of protein. So zinc is also very important, but it can easily be obtained from eating meat and eating legumes like beans. Now we look at nutrition in the postnatal period. So that was nutrition before and during pregnancy. Now we focus on nutrition during after birth, the first 6 months, especially after birth. So an adequately nourished mother accumulates nutrient stores during pregnancy that are used to compensate for higher requirements during the first 3 months, the first 6 months of lactation. Milk output of a lactating mother may amount to 530 kilocalories per day. So what we mean is the mother uses at least 530 kilocalories a day just to make enough breast milk. The energy allowance for a lactating woman is a general 640 kilocalories per day above her ordinary need during the first 6 months of lactation. So therefore, because the milk output, that is the energy that they need, is more than 500 kilocalories a day, then their diet should be at least 600 or 640 kilocalories more than the normal diet. Now remember, this is even higher than during pregnancy, because during pregnancy we say that the mother needs at least 300 more kilocalories. But when the mother is breastfeeding, then the mother needs at least even double what we are adding during pregnancy. So if during pregnancy we are adding 300, during breastfeeding or lactation, we are adding 600. The foods consumed by the nursing mother should offer abundant nutrients, especially those needed to make milk, such as vitamin A, protein, riboflavin, zinc, and plenty of fluids. A mixed and varied diet which satisfies normal requirements during the non-lactating period will usually cover the extra needs for lactation if total intake is increased to satisfy additional energy needs. So we're just saying that these nutrients can easily be achieved if the mother gets a varied, that is a diet that is made up of many different foods from different food groups and is balanced. And also the mother needs enough fluids, because the milk, of course, is fluid. So the mother needs to take in enough fluids. So now we look at breastfeeding, the importance of breast milk and exclusive breastfeeding in the first 6 months of life. So the best and safest method of feeding infants for the first 6 months of life is exclusive breastfeeding. And exclusive breastfeeding means that the baby is given no other food or drink, because breast milk contains all the nutrients that baby needs for the first 6 months of life. It has adequate proteins, fats, energy, minerals, and vitamins, and adequate water even for hot climates. Breast milk contains correct proportions of salt, calcium, phosphate, and enzyme lipase to digest fat. So breast milk is essentially designed to meet all the needs of the infant. So when we talk about exclusive breastfeeding, what we are saying is the baby should only feed on milk from the mother, whether that milk is given directly from the breast where the baby is suckling, or that milk is given after the mother has expressed the milk, especially in cases where the mother has to go back to work after a few months and the baby has not yet reached 6 months, or the mother is away from the baby. So breastfeeding does not just mean that the baby is suckling milk from the breast for 6 months. As long as the milk is from the mother, that milk can be expressed safely and the baby can be given that milk. So that is one thing to consider when you talk about exclusive breastfeeding, because a lot of people think that if I express milk and give the baby, then that is not exclusive. No, that still qualifies as exclusive breastfeeding because it's only you're only giving milk from the mother, you're not giving any other type of food. So breast milk has been designed by nature to have everything that your baby needs. It has enough proteins, enough fats, enough enzymes to ensure that the fat is digested well. It has even what we call the immune factors. So the baby gets even additional immune benefits from taking breast milk. And also, breast milk has enough water to quench the thirst of the baby. Because sometimes people say, well, it's too hot, my baby might be thirsty, I need to add water. No. So as long as you're feeding the baby, there's what, as we continue, you'll see as foremilk and hindmilk. So there are two types of milk. So when the breastfeeding session is initiated, the milk that comes out first is very thin and watery, and that is to quench the thirst of the baby. And then the hind milk is heavy, and that contains all the nutrients that the baby needs. So you do not need to give your baby any water. The milk is enough to quench their thirst. So colostrum is the milk that is made in the first 7 to 10 days, contains many antibodies to protect the infant against infections. It also contains factors that promote the maturation of different body tissues and promote the establishment of normal flora in the infant's gut. This helps the baby against infections. In the first and second weeks after delivery, the milk increases in quantity and changes in appearance and composition. It looks thinner, but contains all the nutrients that baby needs to grow. So colostrum refers to that first milk that looks heavy, thick, and might even be a bit yellowish in color. But that milk is very important, that first milk, because it contains all the antibodies that your baby needs to help them have a good immune function. Also, this colostrum will help the gut of the baby, that is the digestive system of the baby, to mature and to be able to digest milk. And it's important to note that once the baby is born, they should not be given anything else before they are given breast milk. So there's no need that once the baby is born that you give them water, that you give them honey or any other thing. That really just goes to disturb the baby, because the baby's digestive system is not mature enough for anything else other than breast milk. So, and that colostrum is also not supposed to be thrown away. That colostrum is not bad milk, it just appears different. It appears heavy and thick and a bit yellowish, but it's very, very essential to give that to the baby. The composition of breast milk changes during a feed, with more proteins and water in the foremilk and more fat in the hind milk. Therefore, the baby needs both fore and hind milk. The breast milk of a preterm baby is also designed to meet the needs of her baby. So what we are saying is the baby during a feed, so that you ensure that the baby gets both the foremilk that I said is lighter and has more water, that is designed to quench the thirst of the baby more. And the baby also gets the hind milk that has more fat, more nutrients, and is more energy dense, and that is designed mostly to help the baby gain weight. So during a feed, it is important that the mother ensures that the feed is long enough that the baby will get both the foremilk and the hind milk. So we want to encourage mothers when they are feeding that they wait for the breast to empty, so that they avoid switching the baby from one breast to another every few minutes, because that will mean that the baby will not get the hind milk, which will help them in gaining weight and in development. So always encourage the mothers that when they breastfeed, that they empty one breast before they switch to another, so that the baby gets both milks. If a baby is preterm, the milk of the mother is also enough and is also designed to meet the needs of the baby. So even if the baby was born preterm, that is, the baby was born before the gestational period of 37 or 38 weeks, and the baby is preterm, then as long as the mother is encouraged to continue breastfeeding the baby will gain the weight, the baby will get all their needs met through that breast milk. So breast milk quantity, the volume of breast milk varies according to infant demand, the frequency of breastfeeding, the stage of lactation, and granular capacity. It is only in cases of extreme deprivation that a mother's nutritional status may have an adverse effect on milk volume. So what we think is the volume, that is the quantity of breast milk, will vary. That is, it depends on how often the baby is breastfed, how long the baby breastfeeds for, the stage of lactation, that is it the beginning stages or in the middle of stages? Because as we said, in the first 1 to 2 weeks, the mother's milk may not be as much, but after the 2 weeks going forward, the mother's milk becomes more in quantity. So unless the mother is very nutritionally compromised, then the milk volume is not really affected. So the nature has made it such that even if the mother is not nutritionally well, that the baby will still get enough milk. But if it's extreme deprivation, the mother probably also has kwashiorkor or is in starvation, then that means that is when the milk may be compromised. Mothers should be encouraged to practice exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months, and it should continue into the second year of life. So we look at some advantages of breastfeeding. There are very many advantages of breastfeeding. We are only going to highlight some of them. So breast milk is tailored to meet the nutrient needs of a young infant. So breast milk has everything the baby needs, from water to minerals, vitamins, everything that the baby needs. It has anti-infective properties. This is where we say that the breast milk has antibodies from the mother's body. The breast milk gives the baby these antibodies, and the baby can be able to fight off some infections. Breast milk is clean. So unlike other milk that we can reconstitute and that can come into contact with other things that might contaminate it, breast milk comes from the mother clean. During the first 2 weeks, breast milk contains up to 4,000 white blood cells per milliliter, which may inhibit the activities of certain viruses. So in addition to the antibodies, the breast milk also contains some white blood cells. So the mother is essentially building the immunity of the baby through the milk. It protects newborns against allergy development during the vulnerable first few weeks of life. The act of suckling favors a baby normal tooth and jaw alignment. So that act of the baby suckling also encourages development of normal jaws and teeth. Breastfed babies are less likely to be obese because they are less likely to be overfed. So that's also the other concern when we give substitute milks is that the baby might overfeed because the baby is just being given a predetermined quantity of milk. But if the baby is breastfeeding, when they are full, then they will just stop. It is clean and at the right temperature, and that means it's convenient and not costly. So unlike other milk that you have to buy and think of buying every other day or every few weeks and preparing it at the right temperature, heating water, cooling it down and all that, breast milk is just convenient. It's there, it's ready anytime the baby needs it, and it does not really need you to buy it. And then that was on breast milk. Now we look at complementary feeding. So complementary feeding means the progressive transfer of the infant from breast milk to the usual family diet. So complementary feeding is what a lot of people call weaning. So we do not really use the term weaning because we are not, weaning suggests that we are taking the baby off breast milk and into food, but we are complementing the breast milk. So we are not eliminating breast milk at 6 months, we are adding on it. So we are bringing in food to complement the breast milk. That is why it's called complementary feeding. So after 6 months of age, infants require complementary foods and are fully developed to cope with it. So remember, as the baby, when the baby is born, their digestive system cannot really be able to fully and well digest, absorb, or even break down nutrients from food because they are complex. So at birth, up to 6 months, the baby is only developed enough to be able to digest breast milk. But after 6 months, the baby's digestive system can now start digesting other foods. So complementary feeding should include foods rich in protein, iron, and vitamin A and C. Indicators that the baby is ready for complementary feeds includes: 1, the baby is 6 months old. So at 6 months of age, the baby is developmentally ready to start eating food. The baby's birth weight has doubled. So at 6 months, you will realize that from the first year of the baby, there is a lot of rapid growth. The baby gains weight very quickly. The baby also adds their height very quickly. So at 6 months, if the baby has doubled their birth weight, then it is time to start feeding the baby. Then the infant is also developmentally ready. That is, they can sit upright with support and can control their head movements. Now, this is very important because we do not want to start feeding the baby and then the baby is not able to hold up their head. They may end up getting choked. So it is very important that also they have reached this milestone where they can sit upright with support, even as long as they are able to control their head movements. They can at least be able to swallow without the danger of their head moving and their neck causing them to choke, then that is okay. So when introducing new foods, the following considerations should be made. 1, you should consider the baby's nutrients needs. As we have said, the food that you give the baby should have enough vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin D, should have enough proteins, should have also enough vitamins and minerals, and should have enough energy. So when you're giving a food, ensure that it meets the baby's nutrient needs. The baby's physical readiness to handle different forms of food should also be considered, because as you're introducing foods, you will do it over a period of time. You're not going to introduce all the foods at the same time. 1, because the baby physically cannot be able to handle some foods. At that point, the baby does not have enough teeth to be able to chew some foods. The baby might not be able to eat some different textures of food. So at every stage, you have to consider, as the baby grows, is the baby now ready to chew soft foods? can I move the baby from semi-solid foods to mashed foods, from mashed foods to at least soft foods? So the physical readiness of the baby will also guide you in the foods to feed. And then the need to detect and control allergic reactions. So because of the presence of allergies, especially in children under the age of 5, it is important that as you introduce feeds, you're able to detect and control allergic reactions. So you have to be careful about some of the really allergy inducing foods, that is the seafoods, the sea fish, the fish, nuts, some milks, also some animal milk that some babies might be allergic to, and some forms of proteins, maybe animal proteins. So every time you introduce a new food to the baby, you have to be very keen and you have to observe for any allergic reaction so that you can stop giving the food, do some further investigations. So every time you introduce a new food, it is important that you introduce it independently so that you can be able to tell what caused the allergy. Because if you give a baby a combination of 5 different foods and they are all new foods at a go, the baby gets an allergic reaction. You might not be able to tell exactly which food caused the allergic reaction. So it's important that you do introduce foods in a way that you can be able to monitor for allergies. So what is the risk of introducing complementary feeding too early? So you find that there are some people who say that, well, my baby is not getting full at 4 months or 3 months. My baby is not sleeping well. I need to give food. I need to ensure that my baby is full, so I'm going to start giving food. So there is a risk of introducing these feeds too early. So one, introduction of other foods decreases the intensity and frequency of suckling, and consequently, breast milk production is reduced. So production of breast milk, as we said, also depends on the frequency and the intensity of breastfeeding. So the more you breastfeed your baby, the more your body produces breast milk. So if you start giving your baby other foods, then it means the quantity of breast milk that you produce is going to go down because the baby will suckle less. Introduction of cereals can interfere with the absorption of breast milk iron, which is normally low in concentration. So there are some cereals that can inhibit or that can interfere with the absorption of breast milk iron. And as I said, the baby depends on breast milk for the first 6 months of life to give enough calcium and enough iron. So you might introduce foods that will interfere with the absorption of iron, and the baby ends up becoming anemic. Diarrhea, especially in developing countries where most of the population have restricted diets and live in unsanitary environments. So when you introduce foods to the child, remember you're exposing this child to other things. So unlike breast milk, which is safe and clean because it comes from the mother's body, you do not need to disinfect it or anything. When you start giving complementary feeds, then you have to take into consideration that you might use water that is contaminated. The utensils of the baby might not be cleaned well. So you end up predisposing your child to things like diarrhea and other stomach issues. Then pathogenic microorganisms may enter the child during feeding. So now you start exposing the child to things like pathogens. Pathogens are the disease-causing microorganisms. So you find that children who are given feeds too early on have a higher risk of getting infections and getting diseases like diarrhea, like other stomach issues, things like flu, colds, because you are introducing these microorganisms during feeding. Then there's a long-term risk of obesity, hypertension, and food allergies. So if you introduce foods too early and the child has not developed enough to be able to control their feeding, they end up being overfed. So when children are overfed very early on in life, then you're putting them at a higher risk of developing obesity and hypertension. So you really shouldn't introduce feeds or complementary foods before 6 months of life, because you end up really putting this child at risk of so many things. So general considerations when you're selecting these complementary feeds. So the foods suitable for infants and young children vary from place to place depending on availability, cost, culture, and of course food preferences. So a meal should be made from several foods, and each food supplies different nutrients. The food should be in the right proportions so that there is an adequate balance between the energy and the nutrients. Foods chosen should be easily available from the local market or garden, low cost, frequently used in the household. Cooking methods that use little time and fuel are also recommended. So when you're choosing foods, when we say that a meal is made from several foods, remember there are different kinds of food groups. So we have the carbohydrates, we have the proteins, we have the fats, we have the vitamins and the minerals. So when we say that complementary foods should be made from several food groups, what we mean is even a baby's food at 6 months, 7 months should be balanced. In that there should be a carbohydrate, there should be a protein, there should be a source of fat, there should be a source of vitamins and minerals. So even when you're preparing these foods, do not just choose carbohydrates. Do not make it carbohydrate heavy, that the child is not given any protein or any vegetable to give them vitamins or minerals. Meal times should be relaxed and leisurely so that the child develops positive eating attitudes and behaviors. As the child grows older, they should be equipped with eating utensils that are easy to handle. The child should be offered small amounts of food and allow second or third helpings. Snacks between the meals should be planned to enhance the nutritional value of the diet, and snacks should be served at least 1 hour prior to the meal to allow sufficient intake of food at mealtime. So when a complementary feeding begins, it should not be done so forcefully that the child develops a negative attitude towards feeding. It should be done in a relaxed way, in an enjoyable way that the child enjoys mealtime, so that this child develops a positive attitude towards food. We also encourage, as the baby develops, the baby can be able to hold a spoon, hold a cup. You can maybe get a cup with 2 handles. You can get small spoons that are easily handled by the child. You can get small bowls, so that you also encourage the child to feed themselves. And then you start by giving the child a small helping, and then the child finishes that, you give them another helping, even a third helping if they're still hungry. So you do not force feed the child with a lot of food, with a lot of pressure and a lot of negativity surrounding the mealtime, because that will just give the child a negative attitude towards food, and that is not healthy for later in life. And then now we look at the impact of malnutrition in the development of children. So we were talking about adequate nutrition. So if adequate nutrition is there, then the child will develop well. But what happens if the mother is malnourished during pregnancy or even before pregnancy? So undernutrition in pregnancy can be defined as a maternal nutritional state in which nutrient stores and macronutrient or micronutrient intake are less than that needed to achieve optimal maternal, fetal, and newborn outcomes. It is also a risk factor for development of adverse outcomes. So undernutrition is basically a state in which when the mother is pregnant, the nutrients they are taking in, macronutrients refers to the carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. That is the nutrients that we need in large quantities. The micronutrients are the vitamins and the minerals, the nutrients that we need in very small quantities. So if the mother does not have enough nutrient stores of these nutrients, or their intake is less than is needed, then that is what we call malnutrition or undernutrition during pregnancy. And we are saying that it is a risk factor for development of adverse outcomes. Adverse outcomes basically means bad outcomes during pregnancy. And the adverse outcomes that we are referring to, I'm sorry, I lost you for a minute. The adverse outcomes we are referring to include underweight babies, include developmental issues like the neurotube defects that we talked about, brain damage, premature birth, and the development of organs, death, and more. So these are the adverse outcomes that we are saying that might happen in case of undernutrition in pregnancy. So if the mother does not have enough nutrients, the baby can get things like the Spina Bifida, the baby can get brain damage, the baby can be born prematurely, that is before the gestational period of 38 weeks, or you find that the baby has underdeveloped organs. The baby might also be born stillbirth, that is, the baby dies while still in the womb. And also, if a child becomes malnourished in the womb, the damage can be permanent. That means that even after the baby is born, then the damage will be irreversible. The effect that will have already occurred will not be able to be stopped later in life. So during pregnancy, poor diets lacking in key nutrients like iodine, iron, folate, calcium, and zinc can cause anemia, that is low blood in the mother and in the baby, can cause preeclampsia. So preeclampsia is a condition that happens during pregnancy when the mother gets high blood pressure and it becomes fatal. So the mother can die or the baby can die. And then hemorrhage. Hemorrhage is overbleeding and death in mothers. They can also lead to stillbirth. So stillbirth is when the baby is born, but the baby dies in the womb and is born without life. And then low birth weight, which is said is babies below 2.5 kgs. Then wasting and developmental delays for children. So when children are born, there are things we call the developmental milestones, where we say that at, for example, 8 weeks, the baby can smile, the baby can follow hand movements, the baby can follow noise, the baby can hold their head at a certain age, they can sit on their own. So malnutrition during pregnancy can make the baby have developmental delays, where you find that maybe a baby is at 1 year of age, but they can still not hold their own head upright, they cannot maybe even reach out for something, they are not crawling, they cannot be able to make out words. So some of these happens because of malnutrition that happened during pregnancy. Unicef estimates that low birth weight affects more than 20 million newborns every year. So as you can see, it's a big deal because 20 million newborns every year is a lot of children. And a lot of these children are in Africa that are born underweight. So some of these effects carry on later into life, and you find that even the child will have a very tough childhood because they'll be very sickly, they'll miss school, their IQ will be lower than others. So it's a very dangerous thing. So we look at the specific nutrients and the effects that it has. So if there is a deficiency in energy, you get low infant birth weight, you get preterm babies, that is low birth weight, miscarriages, and stillbirths. You get birth defects such as spina bifida, and then you get intrauterine growth retardation. That is when the baby stops growing and developing in the womb and just becomes stagnated. And then protein deficiency leads to reduced infant head circumference. So you find a baby was born with a very small head, and that means that the brain did not develop well. A lack of folate leads to miscarriage and neurotube defects. Lack of vitamin D leads to decreased infant bone density bone pain and fractures, and then vulnerability to dental caries and softening of the bones. So a lack of calcium will carry on later in life. The baby will have very weak bones, very soft bones. Their dental structure will also be affected. Lack of iron will lead to low infant birth weight and premature birth, poor weight gain after birth, preterm labor, eclampsia, premature rupture of the membrane, placenta previa, that is when the placenta ruptures before time, which is very fatal. Dysfunctional labor, that is the labor is not progressing as it should. The baby is stuck or find that there's a lot of bleeding. Then we have internal bleeding, which is also fatal. The mother can go into shock because she might lose a lot of blood, a lot of fluid, and go into shock. And then we have cardiac failure. The mother can also go into cardiac failure if she has low iron. Then low zinc will cause congenital malformation. Now this is where the body structures are not formed properly. So you find that maybe there is malformation in the organs or malformation in some tissue. Then the mother will get prolonged labor. You have intra and postpartum hemorrhage. So the mother might overbleed during or after delivery. And then we have hypertension among pregnant women, which, as I said, is a cause of concern because it causes preeclampsia and eclampsia. And we have vitamin A. Vitamin A deficiency will cause an impaired immune system. So both the mother and the baby will be more likely to get sick. There is increased severity of illness. It can cause maternal death. It also contributes to anemia and inhibits normal iron utilization and also causes impaired vision. So it's also important to ensure that mothers take vitamin A rich foods to avoid all this. Now we look at the effects of malnutrition on the development and immunity of children in the first 5 years of their life. So what happens in the long term? Because we have really focused a lot on what happens during pregnancy and immediately after birth. But remember, malnutrition has effects up to 2,000 days and beyond. So it has effects from 5 years, even beyond. Some effects are lifelong. So the health and physical consequences of prolonged states of malnourishment among children are delay in their physical growth and motor development. So physically, the child will not grow, they will not gain weight, they will not have the adequate height that is needed for their age. They will have lower intellectual quotient. So you find that these children in class struggle more than their colleagues. Then you have greater behavioral problems and deficient social skills. So malnutrition can also cause behavior issues and lack of social skills. Then they have susceptibility to contracting diseases. So their immunity is really compromised. And you find that these children will always be in and out of hospitals with infections and diseases. Malnutrition can cause permanent, widespread damage to a child's growth, development, and well-being. Stunting in the first 1,000 days is associated with poorer performance in school, both because malnutrition affects brain development and also because malnourished children are more likely to get sick and miss school. So stunting is where the child is too short for their age. So, and this occurs because of chronic malnutrition, where the child does not get enough nutrients over an extended period of time. And stunting is irreversible. And beyond 2 years of life, it's not reversible. So the first 2 years of this child's life, the child needs adequate nutrients to ensure that they develop well, that they grow to the height that is required, because beyond 2 years, then this child will be stunted for life. Hidden hunger can cause blindness, that is vitamin A deficiency, impair learning, iodine deficiency, and increase the risk of a mother dying in childbirth, that is iron deficiency. Hidden hunger refers to micronutrient deficiency. If you remember, we talked about both macro and micronutrients. So the micronutrients are nutrients that we need in small quantities, but they're very essential for physiological functions, the day-to-day functions of the body. So hidden hunger is called that because it's not really an absence of food, it's an absence of nutrients in the food, so it is hidden. Now, these nutrients, when they are not there, you'll find that, for example, vitamin A can cause visual impairment. Iodine can impair learning because it affects the development and the functioning of the brain. And then iron deficiency can cause the mother to hemorrhage, can cause lifelong anemia. And then overweight and obesity can lead to serious illnesses like type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular diseases. And this is very important because it's coming up as the health trends we are seeing is that the obesity and overweight and things like type 2 diabetes, they are really coming up a lot in recent times. A lot of people are becoming overweight and obese. So these can lead to a lot of serious diseases that somebody will have to live with for the rest of their life. And then we look at malnutrition and infection. So one of the main issues that malnutrition brings is that it compromises the immunity of the child. And now this puts the child in kind of a cycle of malnutrition and infection. So the child has inadequate dietary intake, and then the child has weight loss, faltering growth, lowered immunity, and damage to the mucosal membranes. And now this increases disease incidence, duration, and severity. Now that leads to appetite loss, nutrient loss, malabsorption, altered metabolism, which leads to inadequate dietary intake. So the child kind of gets stuck in a cycle where they are malnourished and then they get sick, then the sickness makes the malnourishment worse, and then they end up being severely malnourished. That compromises the immunity, they get sick again. So it becomes a lifelong cycle of malnutrition and infection. There is a strong relationship between malnutrition and infection and infant mortality because poor nutrition leaves children underweight, weakened, and vulnerable to infections, primarily because of epithelial integrity and inflammation. So epithelial integrity is just the layer of tissue of cells that lines your mouth, your digestive tract, your nasal and breathing tract. So when these cells are compromised, and they are one of the primary defense mechanisms that we have in the body, then disease enters the body more quickly. If you have very weak epithelial cells in your circulatory system or in your respiratory system, and you breathe in air that is contaminated, then those pathogens will have an easier time getting into your body than for someone who has healthy epithelial tissue. So that is where that comes in. So 5 infectious diseases, that is pneumonia, diarrhea, malaria, measles, and AIDS, account for more than 1/2 of all deaths in children aged less than 5 years. So that means that these infectious diseases really have a fatal outcome, because if they cause half of all the deaths of children under 5, then it means that if we can improve the nutrition status of these children, then we can decrease their mortality, that they will get less sick and they will survive more. Malnutrition can make a person more susceptible to infection, and infection also contributes to malnutrition, which, as we have seen, causes a vicious cycle. An inadequate dietary intake leads to weight loss, lowered immunity, mucosal damage, invasion by pathogens, and impaired both growth and development in children. A sick person's nutrition is further aggravated or made worse by diarrhea, malabsorption, loss of appetite, diversion of nutrients for the immune response, and urinary nitrogen loss, all of which lead to nutrient losses and further damage to defense mechanisms. These in turn cause reduced dietary intake. In addition, fever increases both energy and micronutrient requirements. So this is just an explanation for the cycle that we saw, where we say that when a person is sick, then symptoms of diseases such as loss of appetite, diarrhea, malabsorption in the body will make their nutrients, their nutrition status worse. And on top of all of that, the person will have reduced nutrient intake. So they will be eating less even when their body is demanding more. So that means that it becomes very difficult for a sick person to improve their nutrition status because the sickness is demanding more nutrients from the body, and the symptoms of the sickness are causing the person not to take in adequate food. So that brings me to the end of my presentation today, where we have looked at nutrition in brief for the first 2,000 days of life. As I said, the first 2,000 days of life are from conception to the 5th birthday of the child, so the first 5 years of life. And we have looked at why it is important to have good nutrition status. So as just a short recap, we have said that there are some nutrients that are of major concern during this period, and that is folic acid, iron, energy, protein, vitamin D, vitamin A, and calcium. So all of those nutrients are very important before conception and during pregnancy to ensure that the baby develops well, to ensure that we do not have intrauterine growth retardation, we do not get miscarriages or stillbirths, and we also reduce the chances of developmental issues of either the spine, the brain, or even body organs. We've also looked at the role of breastfeeding in the first 6 months of life. It is very important that we encourage exclusive breastfeeding during these first 6 months of life so that the child's immunity is boosted due to the breast milk, and so that the child also has a better chance of avoiding infections that can cause things like diarrhea and some infectious diseases. Also, we have seen that it is important that complementary feeding is done in a timely manner, that it is done at 6 months of life, not too early or too late, because if it is done too early, then the baby is not developmentally ready and able to digest this food. If it is done too late, then the baby will not be getting adequate nutrients and might get malnourished. And we have looked at malnutrition and what it does in pregnancy and in children. And we have seen malnutrition can cause lifelong damage, because if malnutrition occurs in the womb when development is still going on, some things like the intrauterine growth retardation can be reversible. If it occurs when the child is young, the first 2 years, things like stunting are also irreversible. Their intelligence is also affected, and that is also lifelong. Their immunity is also affected, and that means that they might get stuck in a cycle of malnutrition and sickness. So that is what we are focusing on. And I'd like to inform all of our participants that we at Humanitarian Global offer an extensive in-depth course on maternal, infant, and young child nutrition, where you will get to learn more about this. You will get to understand each of these topics more in depth. You will understand how we can really play a role and help ensure that we have healthy mothers, we have healthy children, because if we can get healthy children at the start of their life, then we set them up for a very good childhood and a very successful adulthood, because they will not be sick, they will not spend so much time away from school, they will not have behavioral issues, they will not be stunted or struggle in class. And so it's very important that we take care of our mothers and our young children. So we offer a certificate course for 3 months, for a duration of 3 months. The course fee is $500, but today we have a discount. If you enroll with us today, you will get a 10% discount from us, because we really want to educate and train people so that they can be able to help our communities and our societies for the better future of our continent. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. And I guess now we open the floor for your questions and your answers. And I will kindly request Eric to facilitate this session.
Thank you, Irene, for the well-taught session. And if I may direct you to the Q&A, we have a few questions there that you may answer. I don't know if you're there with me.
Yes.
Yeah, we have a few questions there from our participants. I think we can start with those as also we continue.
Okay, so I can see Oliver asked, as you mentioned from the presentation, for how long will all women of childbearing age continue taking folic acid? So you take folic acid until menopause. So as long as you have menstruation happening, then you should ensure that you take enough folic acid, because you continue to lose folic acid and iron through menstruation. So you should ensure that you take folic acid for as long as you can bear a child, and that is up to menopause. So Galaxy J4 Plus asked, there are babies who refuse to breastfeed at birth, so what could be the best liquid to give? So if the child is not able to latch, that is not able to attach to the breast and suckle and breastfeed, breastfeeding can be achieved through getting the mother to express the milk and the child being given the milk in another way using a cup and spoon. So before we go to finding another solution, another milk, the first step is, if the baby is not able to latch, or if there are challenges with latching, then the mother is encouraged to express that breast milk, collect it in a safe and clean way, and then the baby can be given breast milk, but from a cup and spoon. In case the mother totally does not have any breast milk, or the mother is not there, or for one reason or another, that the child cannot be able to access breast milk, then there are other alternatives like the formulas, the milk formulas. But the first thing we need to ensure is that maybe we can collect breast milk from the mother. But if we cannot get breast milk at all, then there are milk formulas. Then Galaxy A12 asked, what is the role of breast milk, the development of normal flora in the body? So normal flora basically is the normal microorganisms that exist and live in the digestive tract of the baby, that help in the development of the baby, and that are able to help the baby digest and absorb and utilize the nutrients. So breast milk helps this normal flora develop. So it has all the nutrients that it needs that will help these normal flora or these microorganisms not overgrow or die. So if the baby, for example, a newborn baby, is given other liquid that is not milk, then the normal flora in the baby might overgrow or might die off, which affects their digestion. So breast milk helps the normal flora develop well, and the baby be able to digest food and milk well. And then we have Sakid Adamu, who asked, can this slide be shared via mail? The network has been bad. Thank you. Yes, we will share all of this. If you share your email, we will share. And then you also asked, and what are locally nutritious food the mother can take during prenatal stage? So the locally available foods, of course, depend on where you are, but there are no, what can I say, there's no special food that now we recommend that the mother takes. As long as the mother takes a balanced diet that has what we call the carbohydrates, the proteins, the vitamins and the minerals, takes enough milk to get enough calcium, and also takes enough water, then that is adequate. So you use the locally available foods you have, but ensure that it is balanced, that the mother has carbohydrates, the mother has enough vegetables, the mother has access to proteins from meat, from plants, has eggs, all of those things. So as long as it is balanced, you use what is locally available. And then Galaxy J for us, as Somalis, there's a tradition that most of our mothers practice, such as mixing honey or dates at birth and mixing butter and milk. What are the risks to the baby? So the risk of giving prelactal feeds is what we call them. That is feeds that you give before the baby is breastfed. The risk of giving the baby such feeds is that, one, the baby has not developed enough for them to be able to digest these feeds. So you can cause stomach upsets to the baby because these honey or dates will not be properly digested. Another thing is that honey is really not recommended to be given for children under the age of 1. So because the babies can get a very severe reaction from it. So you are not supposed to give anything other than breast milk, because the baby's body is not ready to digest anything else. And giving these feeds can cause digestive upsets, can cause stomach problems, can cause allergic reactions, because things like butter and milk are proteins from animals. And sometimes at a very young age, children can also get allergic reactions from such things. So you can trigger allergic reactions. You can cause the baby to have digestive upsets. You are also interfering with the normal process of the baby. So you can also discourage the baby from breastfeeding, which we do not want to do. Then Mark Joseph, you have explained something about food allergies in children under 5. How do I ensure that the kind of food given to children do not cause allergies? So you cannot really tell if a child is allergic to a food unless they were exposed or given the food and they had an allergic reaction, or you took the child to a pediatrician and they did an allergy test and they told you that your child is allergic to these foods. So you learn from experience, and that is done by introducing feeds slowly, one at a time, one new food at a time, and then observing for allergic reactions. If an allergic reaction occurs, then you avoid the food. But the foods that have a very high likelihood of causing allergic reactions are things like nuts, things like fish and seafood, some animal proteins. Also, what else causes? Things like some animal milks also might cause some allergic reactions. So the only thing you can do is introduce the foods one at a time in a way that you're able to observe for the allergic reactions. Or you can take them to a doctor and get an allergy test done, and then you can be able to avoid those foods altogether. So how can we integrate MIYCN to CMAM program? What does CMAM stand for, child? I will come back to that kindly. Anonymous attendee, I will come back to that. Let me do some more research. And so somebody else, Abigail, asked on sources of iron. Spinach should be omitted because it has oxalic acid, and this will make iron not to be absorbed in the body. Yeah, well, there are different schools of thought on spinach and iron, but it is true it has oxalic acid. But there are other traditional vegetables that we can give to the baby that do not have this oxalic acid. So spinach is not the only good source of iron. We also have the organ meats, we also have the legumes, the cereals. So yes, spinach has oxalic acid and it might cause that, but there are other leafy green vegetables that also have iron. And then Ubafara, when and why the breastfeeding is better to avoid. So breastfeeding should not be avoided at all. The only reason we could avoid breastfeeding is if there's a medical reason to do so, and the doctor says that breastfeeding should be avoided. So breastfeeding is recommended in all cases, even when the baby is preterm, even when the baby is sick, even when the mother is sick, because if the mother is sick, then she will pass on antibodies to the baby. And even in cases when the mother has HIV and AIDS, which used to be a source of concern, nowadays there are guidelines on how the mother can safely breastfeed their baby even when they have HIV and AIDS. So in all cases, breastfeeding is recommended unless there is a serious medical issue that the doctor advises against. And then we have Mark Joseph also. What are the importances of vitamin A and zinc acids in pregnant mothers? So as we said, vitamin A is very essential in immunity. So immunity and issues to do with vision, development of good eyesight, good vision is important in vitamin A. In zinc, it's very important to avoid congenital malformalities because of the zinc is used in RNA and DNA synthesis. So when replication is happening, it's very important for zinc to be adequate. It also helps in avoiding things like stillbirths and hemorrhaging or excessive bleeding. And then Abduliva asked, is it true that a mother can naturally have low breast milk as some mothers proclaimed? So the thing with producing enough breast milk is that the more the mother breastfeeds, the more the body makes milk. So if the mother is claiming to have low breast milk, just encourage her to continue breastfeeding, because the more she feeds, the more the body produces. So it's an issue to do with how often they are breastfeeding, how long they are breastfeeding, and also you have to check on the attachment, because if the baby is not suckling properly and the milk is not coming out properly as it should, then it means there might be issues like blocked duct and milk is not flowing properly. So naturally low breast milk is really an issue to do with how often they breastfeed and also how well they breastfeed. How to plan the malnutrition cases, Christopher asked, in crisis periods. So malnutrition, we deal with it during crisis in different ways. And by during crisis, I think you mean during some kind of emergency. And Christoph, I'd invite you to engage more with us, because we actually have an entire course that we have on that is nutrition during emergencies, where you will get to learn how we carry out nutrition assessment, how we carry out inpatient management, outpatient management of malnutrition when there's an emergency. So I encourage you to engage more with us, and we can come up with a way to help you understand more on these and get those skills. So back to the question I got asked by an anonymous person on how we can integrate maternal, infant, and young child nutrition to the community-based management of acute malnutrition. Now, as we know, the CMAM, or the community-based management of acute malnutrition, is an approach that enables community volunteers to identify and initiate treatment for children with acute malnutrition, and get them referred to health centers so that they can get help before the malnutrition becomes serious. Now, MIYCN is critical in CMAM programs because the maternal and infant young child nutrition will give you knowledge and skills to understand how to carry out assessment, how to even educate the people and the community to avoid these cases of malnutrition. So they go hand in hand to ensure that you really have a wider base of knowledge to help you carry out your CMAM duties well. So I would encourage you to enroll for the MIYCN. It will really give you the skills that will help you as you serve the community and as you help them identify and treat these cases of malnutrition. It will really be a critical thing that you will have done. So they go hand in hand. In fact, I think if you do the MIYCN program, you will be able to understand malnutrition and how to identify it and treat it in children in the community even better. So Eric, I think those are all the questions that I can see, unless somebody else has a comment or
I think I'm trying to look at if we missed anything from the chat. I know a few people posted a question, but I think also at this time the floor is open for participants. If you have any question, you can raise your hand, and we will give you this chance to ask any question towards the facilitator or towards Anthony. Yeah, so let me check if we have any hands that are up at this moment. I think I can see a few hands that are up. Ali Tua, are you there with us? Ali Tua?
Yes, hello.
Yes, hello, how are you?
Yes, I'm fine. My name is Ali Tua. Thanks presenters for the nice presentation, and thanks moderators. Actually, my question is like, what needs to be done to help the woman who has delivered, just in case the milk does not come out? That's one. And the second question is like, what is the recommended time for the woman who has been actually breastfeeding to stop the breastfeeding? What is the recommended time for the woman to stop, just to stop the breastfeeding? For example, if it happens that maybe the woman actually has breastfed the baby for the 6 months, exclusive feeding also has passed. So what is the recommended time for this woman to stop the breastfeeding from the baby? Yeah.
okay. Thank you for your question. So your first question is how we can encourage the mother to breastfeed at the beginning if the mother does not have milk. So yeah. Milk letdown, or how the baby gets, the mother starts producing breast milk, needs to be initiated. For some people, the milk letdown comes in as the hormones changes during birth, but most of the time it needs to be initiated. So as soon as the mother gives birth, within an hour of giving birth, we should encourage the mother to have what we call kangaroo with the baby. Put the baby on her chest, form that bond as soon as possible within the first hour of birth. As soon as the mother has given birth, we give the baby to them, and then we encourage the mother to latch the baby as soon as possible within that first hour, so that the baby's suckling can stimulate the milk letdown. So we have to stimulate the coming in of the breast milk most of the times. Also, we encourage the mother, we ensure that the mother has a supportive environment, because breastfeeding can be very challenging. And one of the main things that can affect breastfeeding is the mental state of the mother. The mother needs to be relaxed, they need to be in a supportive environment. And therefore, when we initiate breastfeeding, we need to make the environment as comfortable as possible for the mother. And then just encourage the mother to continue attaching the baby, latching on the baby, so that the breast milk letdown can be stimulated. Because the more the baby suckles, the more the stimulation happens, and the faster the mother will get the breast milk. You can also give the mother warm fluids or warm liquids to drink, so that that also helps in that stimulation. You can also tell the mother to try massaging the breast, so that at least the milk letdown also happens. But the most important thing is initiate that bonding and that breastfeeding as soon as possible. So within an hour of giving birth, let the mother have the baby, let the mother bond with the baby, let the mother attach the baby and the baby to start suckling as soon as possible. The second question you had is for how long the mother should breastfeed. So breastfeeding can go on from 2 years and beyond. So that means that at least we recommend exclusive breastfeeding for the first 6 months. We recommend that it goes on until 2 years, but it can go beyond depending on the mother and the situation. So there is no harm for a mother to continue breastfeeding a 3-year-old baby, as long as they are comfortable with it, both of them. There is really no harm in it, but the mother can stop after 2 years. But if she wishes to continue, then there is no harm in it.
Thank you for that. I think I can see a question from the chat from Simon Agongo, who asked, I want to find out how to feed a child who is 15 months and is refusing any food apart from Malta drink.
Okay, so the child is 15 months old, so that's 1 year and 3 months. So the child should have already been introduced to the family diet totally at this point. So the first thing you can do is ensure that you make meal times a family thing. Include the child during meal times, because children learn by seeing. So if you eat with the child, engage the child in feeding, then the child is more likely to be receptive. The other thing is, I actually have a question about that, is, does the child have any developmental issues? Because also maybe the child is not able to chew. So can the child, is the jaw, the teeth, are they developmentally, are they well developed? If so, then it's just a matter of teaching the child how to feed slowly with a lot of patience. Because if the child is only surviving on milk, then of course they are not getting the nutrients that they need. So first of all, encourage the child to eat by making it a social family thing. So start feeding the child, start including the child during meal times. Give them their own food from the family pot, from what the family is eating. Because another issue might be that the baby sees that they have their food different from everyone else, and they might be resisting that. So include the child in the family meal, give them food from the pot that you're eating, engage them, make it social, and then teach the child to chew. If developmentally the child is okay, then teach the child to chew. You'll have to teach them how to feed slowly, and as I said, with a lot of patience. So if the child is okay, just encourage them, start feeding them, eating with them, make it a social thing. Give the child a positive environment to feed, because if the child gets a lot of negativity during meal times and they are being forced to eat, then it might lead to more resistance. But if the environment is more positive, more encouraging, and also give variety, so that the meals are not too monotonous and the child gets interested. So also make it exciting. You can try giving colorful utensils to the child so that they get interested. You can try giving contrasting food. So if you're giving like an orange colored food, then you can put it on a blue plate so that the child gets the contrasting and the difference and gets excited. But you can teach a child to eat, but you have to do it in a very positive environment and be patient with them. So you start off slowly with small bits of food, encourage them to eat, make it a positive learning experience, and the child is likely to, over time, just get used to eating. Also, before I finish answering that question, if you suspect that there is a challenge that the child is undergoing through, either developmentally or in any other way, then you can also visit a pediatrician. You can get the child checked out, because there are professionals, the occupational therapists, who can also help you be able to feed the child. So do not struggle with it alone. You can also seek medical help if there is any challenge, maybe developmentally, or if the child is having challenges swallowing or chewing or things like that. There are professionals who are trained to help with that. So it's also advisable that you get a bit of advice from healthcare professionals, so that if there is anything or any support that you can get that would be helpful, then that is also great.
Thank you for that, Moregi. The floor is still open. If you have any question concerning today's session or comment, feel free to raise your hand. Can be a question about either the session today, or just a question regarding Humanitarian Global, who it is, what they do. The floor is still open, so you may still raise your hand. I can see a Mark Joseph. Mark Joseph, are you there with us?
I'm there with you.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Hope you're doing well.
Yes, okay, thank you. So I have a question here.
Okay.
Because I need to know what can we do in a situation where a mother can give birth to a baby and die 1 day or 2 days later. What is the best way that we can do so that we ensure that the child which is left by the mother can be fed and live well? Another thing is also the recommended period for the breastfeeding, especially in infants with mothers who are positive with HIV/AIDS. What is the required period for the breastfeeding?
Okay, so you asked about children who have been abandoned by their mothers. So in some instances, you can find what we call a wet nurse. That is someone who is breastfeeding or has recently breastfed their own child, and they are able and willing to take the child and breastfeed them as their own. In cases where that is not applicable, we have infant formulas, which are the next best thing to breast milk. They are not as recommended as breast milk because they do not have the immune factors that breast milk has. But in instances where we cannot get breast milk at all, then the infant formulas are our next option. If infant formulas are too expensive to maintain or to buy, then you can also get modified animal milk. So those are the options that the child can get. As for the breastfeeding mothers with HIV and AIDS, I will have to get back to you on that because the guidelines have changed. So I might give you an answer that is not recent. But what I know is the child gets is under medication and they can exclusively breastfeed for 6 months. What I'm not sure about is if with the new guidelines, they continue breastfeeding to 1 year or to 2 years. So I'm not very sure about that because I'm aware guidelines have recently changed. But I know for 6 months, as long as the child is under medication, they can exclusively breastfeed. Now, I'm not sure if they continue to 1 year or to 2 years. I will get back to you on that. If you can kindly share your email address, I will confirm that and get back to you.
Thank you for that, Mark. I hope we got to answer your question. Floor is still open for any other question or comment. We also encourage feedback concerning the session today. You may tell us. Yes, I can see Lul Omar. Are you there with us, Omar?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, and thank you for the presenter and the moderators for you. And for me, I wanted to ask the presenter some questions and some comments. For example, in Somalia or in Africa, the families are big families. So maybe they have a lot of more children, like 10 or 8 or 10 children. So can we, in the child in 6 months, we are in after 6 months, the child will be started in food like bananas like that. We must start. So some families are complaining. They said, can we cannot give the family meal. So because they said we don't have we can't maybe it's not balanced diet, is not the nutrients that the baby needs. Maybe the baby cannot chew. So how can we solve that questions like that?
So you're asking how we can ensure that the baby gets enough nutrients at 6 months?
Yeah.
Okay. So when we talk about introducing complementary food, you said we do it at 6 months. And we say that we have to take into consideration the nutrient needs of the baby and meet all these needs. So when we are introducing feeds at 6 months, I want you to understand that breastfeeding is still continuing. So we are not totally stopping breastfeeding and starting giving foods. So when we're introducing foods, we are supposed to introduce them slowly as we look out for things like allergies, constipation, any severe reactions. And then by the time the child is 1 year, they are fully integrated into the family diet. So the way we are supposed to do complementary feeding is not that at 6 months, the child should eat everything that is in the family diet. So we start with 1 meal as the child continues to feed on breast milk. And then once the child is a bit older at 7 or 8 months, then we come in with 2 meals And then at 9 months, 10 months, then we come in with 3 meals. So we introduce these foods gradually. So it is not practical that at 6 months, we give a child a meal that contains all the foods that the family is eating. Okay, so that is the first thing. We introduce complementary feeds slowly and over time, so that by 1 year, the child can now fully integrate into the family diet. That being said, when we're introducing these foods, we try to make them as balanced as possible. So if we're introducing things like bananas, or bananas are the most common, or potatoes, but potatoes are carbohydrates. We can add in something that can also be mashed, something like a carrot that has a very high vitamin A and is also a vegetable. We can also add in things like mashed beans, that is a protein. So we can find a way to work around the family diet without overwhelming the child and without introducing all the foods at once. Okay, so we just have to do it in a clever way. If the people are eating something like a stew, and the stew has carrots, the stew has beans, then we can mash the beans, we can mash the carrots for the child.
Yeah.
And they will have gotten the protein, they will have gotten the vegetables, right?
Right. Thank you.
Yes. So we just need to modify the foods that the family is having, because the child does not have teeth. At some point, they cannot chew properly. But if the family is eating a certain kind of food and we can cook that food to a consistency that it can be mashed, it can be a soft food, then we give that to the baby. Okay. So if the family is eating something like rice and some bean stew, then from the bean stew, you can get the beans, you can get maybe the stew has some carrots, you can mash that, you can mash the rice together with this, and the child can feed on that. So as long as we are not giving the baby carbohydrate heavy foods, because most of the time when children are being given complementary feeds, you find that children sometimes are given a lot of carbohydrates and people forget to give the proteins and the vegetables. But we also have those proteins and vegetables in our diet. We just need to modify them in a way that the baby can be able to eat them. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that. I can also see another question from the chat by Said. Just before I go to Neshta, just a question. During complementary feeding, what are the most features that knows children needing food? And then the second part of the question is what best food starting and suitable for local food? I guess that is for the child. What will be the best starting food, maybe when they begin to eat?
Okay. So, Said, your first question, like, what are the features that you will use to see that the child is ready for complementary food? First of all, the child has to have reached 6 months of age. Number two, developmentally, the child has to be able to sit upright with help and can be able to hold their head upright. So as long as the child can be able to hold their head upright and has reached 6 months of age, and then you can be able to introduce these feeds. Okay. Then the best starting food, you can start complementary feeding with any food apart from the foods that we said are allergens. That is, apart from foods that are likely to cause an allergic reaction. So depending on the foods you have in your locality, you can start with anything really, as long as you watch out for the reaction of the baby. So previously, people thought that you have to wait up to a certain age, like 9 months, to give proteins, or 10 months to give this, but you do not have to do that. You can introduce all these foods at any given time. So it is really you to choose how to introduce these foods, as long as they are balanced and they are healthy. Okay, and as long as you do it in a way that you can watch out for allergic reactions. So you can start with anything. You can start with porridge, you can start with bananas, you can start with potatoes, you can start with carrots, with pumpkins, anything. You are allowed to start with anything, as long as it is done in a safe way and you can watch out for any reactions in the child.
Thank you for that. I think I can allow Neshta to ask a question. Nasteha, sorry. Nasteha, are you there with us? Okay, maybe as we wait for Nasteha, I have another question here from Mark Joseph, who is asking what's the difference between hemorrhage and pre-eclampsia?
Okay, so Joseph, hemorrhage is what happens when there's excessive bleeding. So hemorrhage is excessive bleeding, especially in this context, during labor and delivery. And then preeclampsia is a condition that happens when the mother's blood pressure is very high and it becomes dangerous to continue the pregnancy for both the mother and the child. So hemorrhage has to do with bleeding and excessive bleeding. Preeclampsia has to do with blood pressure, high blood pressure in pregnancy.
I hope that was clear, and thank you. The floor is still open for you to ask any question. I think I can see a hand up. We are still taking questions, comments, or feedback concerning today's session. I think we can take maybe one more question. Mark Joseph, are you there with us?
Yes, I'm there. I'm hearing you.
Yes, Mark, you may ask your question.
Okay, thank you. I have a question about the obesity, because we know that obesity is one form of malnutrition. And for example, SAM and MAM, which is the moderate acute malnutrition and severe acute malnutrition, can be treated by use of LUTF, LUSF, and CSU++ and other supplementary food that is required. But I do not know whether obesity can be treated. How do we handle to treat obesity in the context of nutrition? Malnutrition, I mean.
Okay, thank you for your answer. Obesity, because it's a form of malnutrition, as you have said, because it's excessive intake of nutrients, can be treated, but it's not treated in the sense that there is a supplementary food you can give or therapeutic food you can give. The treatment for obesity is a change in the diet and the lifestyle. So an obese person whose obesity is tied to overnutrition, that is overeating, or a sedentary lifestyle, is really educated and encouraged and shown how to change their diet. So we come up with meal plans where we show these people how to eat nutrients in a way that we encourage the body to burn the excess nutrients. So we come up with personalized meal plans that will ensure that they get enough nutrients, but they also encourage their body to burn the excess and use the excess fat. And then secondly, we also encourage and teach them how to live an active lifestyle, how to do exercises, because the only way they can also help burn the excess fat, burn the excess nutrients is by doing exercise. In case of morbid obesity, extreme obesity, where the BMI is 50, 60 upwards, where the person has even lost all mobility, maybe they are even bound to their bed, then there are surgical and medical interventions that can happen, where you find now there are cases like when people are done bariatric surgery and things like those. But the medical and surgical interventions are done in very extreme cases. In the cases that we find day to day, we just need to teach these people how to eat a healthy, balanced diet and how to exercise and burn off the excess weight. And over time, they will lose the excess weight and they will be healthy.
Okay, thank you. It's clear.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that. And I think at this point, I'd like to invite back Anthony. Thank you so much, our participants, for the questions, the comments, and the feedback. We really appreciate you. Anthony, are you there with us?
Yes, I can hear you, Eric.
Yeah, thank you. And the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. So we have come to the end of the session. Just a moment. And as we end, it is only fair to make sure that we can leave you with details on how you can reach out to us in case you have further inquiries in regard to the topics of the day, or maybe you want to further your training on these particular area, or even other areas that we mentioned. So this is the website, and just a quick run through. This is the website, and this is where you find all the details about the programs that we offer. And you can always reach out to us in case you have an inquiry on the same. So we have the contact details appearing at the top of the page, where you have the phone number, the WhatsApp numbers that you can reach out to us through them, and also the email address, as you can see it here. The good thing is that you can also like our page on Facebook. So there's a link here for Facebook page, and that would lead you to the Facebook page. So ensure that you can like our page to be able to get all the notifications as we post them there. In addition to that, I would like to confirm that when it comes to the recorded version, like for today's session, you're going to have it available tomorrow or maybe latest on Monday. That is when you're going to have the recorded version and also the slides. So what happens, we do publish them on the YouTube channel. So we have a YouTube channel, and here is the link. So once you click on the link for YouTube here, you're going to be redirected to the channel. And here you can see we have very many webinars that we have posted before. Even these 2 days ago, we had one for monitoring and evaluation. We had another one for acute IMAM, that is integrated management of acute malnutrition. So this is also a session that I would like to refer you to go and have a recap on. So very many sessions which have been published here. So you can always follow up with our page, our channel, to ensure that you can cover them. In that regard, ensure that you can also subscribe to the page so that once we post a new video, you can always get a notification on the same. Without forgetting, we also get to post on other social media platforms such as LinkedIn. So you can follow us on our page on LinkedIn without forgetting Instagram. So thank you so much, and it has been a pleasure to host you. I know it is on a Saturday, and we thank you for setting aside time to join our session today. We wish you a great weekend, and let's continue sharing what you've learned. I hope it's going to be impactful in your day-to-day work, as we also get to better humanitarianism and make the world a better place. So thank you so much, and from Humanitarian Global, we wish you a great weekend. So thank you, and bye-bye for now.
Yeah, my name is Stephen Muchami. I am a consultant and also a trainer for Humanitarian Global, and my areas of competencies are diverse, basically in WASH and also in project management and monitoring and evaluation. Had lengthy years of consultancy work with humanitarian organizations in the area of WASH projects, and that's basically what describes me. Yeah, in terms of efficiency, we can say that the program really was well organized, was well coordinated, and I think we managed to achieve a lot. Sometimes some sessions we could be run over by time because there is much to cover and the time sometimes is limiting. But interestingly, this is a program that we have essentially been able to cover everything that we intended to cover. When you look back at the training plan as it was, there's no single session that we have not covered adequately, as much as we had a lot of fruitful discussions within that coverage. So I can say the program was very, very efficient. Definitely, I think Humanitarian Global is an institution that applies global standards in terms of humanitarian training, and that is the reason why participants coming from different countries can actually be able to feel very, very comfortable to be able to come into Humanitarian Global, find global standards, find global knowledge, find global skills and global tools and techniques to be able to help them apply their profession in diverse organizations. So I think the choice of Humanitarian Global is surely the best bet they can have for humanitarian training.
Okay, thank you.
I would say this was successful, and of course it was a very good opportunity to facilitate core for this particular training, and we are hopeful to be able to get more of his colleagues coming for further training, and again also even beyond training, consultancy opportunities as well with his organization, and I think that is something that we are looking forward to and keep a long-lasting relationship.